thanks, Yue, for this. I mean, some really interesting food for thought on the impact of everything. I'm going to talk a lot more about Agile, really. And this 360 I'm going to give you is going to start by looking back over the summer's big event, which was the Agile conference in Nashville, where Yue and Will organized the UX track, which was really, really good because there was a good summary of what people were doing across the world, as well as an interesting take on what the future will look like. And then I will talk to you briefly about my own experience of doing Agile and UX and why I absolutely love it. And I hope to enthuse you as well. So let's get started. Agile 2013 was really interesting. It was 1,200 people in Nashville in an absolutely amazing place. Practitioners of all over the place. Not that many UXers, a lot of product owners, a lot of business owners or people who were working with teams trying to organize their business, trying to understand what was this thing. Quite a fair amount of coaches as well, but a very wide-ranging, a lot of people, all very interesting, all very passionate. And everyone really wants to make Agile work because it really looks like it's going to stay around. It's been in the scene for 11 years. It's not going away. If you hate Agile, just go do something else or don't approach them because it's doing really, really well. Businesses of all sizes, all over the world are undertaking it with more or less success. But the interesting thing was that everyone was there to share their experience, their experiments. And because Agile was born with a manifesto, with the opinion of a few people, it is still all along very much about telling individual stories and finding out what has been working for me. And people have been very good at putting things back in context, sharing how their business did it, why it worked, why it didn't work, and also at admitting their failures, which is such a huge learning ground. And in particular, Nokia and Spotify gave some really, really interesting stories. I'm just going to come back very briefly. When I say business large and small, you can see a startup all the way to a giant who, although their phones don't work very, very well, believe me that what they make money of is their maps, which is born out of Berlin, where I used to work. And it's a very interesting size of the business, which is why they retained it in. There were lots of experiments outside of development. It's a very interesting theme is a lot of people are trying to make Agile work outside the dev room. They're trying to make it at enterprise level. They're trying to bring it out to other disciplines. And in lots of ways, when we talk about Agile UX, we are also doing the same thing. We're trying to bring this thinking, this philosophy, which was born in the dev room for developers, by developers, trying to solve a problem that they had, that no one else had noticed until then, which was the fact they didn't feel involved in the process, they weren't happy with the quality, they weren't happy with the level of collaboration, either between them or with the rest of the business. So it's all about experimenting. And the really, really big thing this year at Agile 2013, and in all the conferences I've been doing, is it's all about collaboration. There is no silver bullet, there is no secret manual, and the big talk was, how do I work with people better? How do I make my teams engage? How do I bring external stakeholders in? How do I make intercultural, all over the world teams work together? And this is very much about being human. This is not about development. This is not about quality of software. This is not about how you test it. It was about, I would say about 70% of the conference was all about people. How do we work together? How do we work well? And the belief at the back of that was, if we work well together, we will do a better product, and we'll also have more enjoyment doing it. So it's a win-win all across. Individual satisfaction, business satisfaction, happy customers, better world. A bit idealistic, but I kind of like that. And collaboration was really explored from all angles. But the big questions and the talks that came in mean that now the knowledge that is pouring into Agile comes very much from psychology and social sciences. And a lot of the coaches were bringing things from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Mixing my letters. A lot of psychology coming in. So it's almost becoming HR territory. How do you make people play well? What has the research proven? What trick can we bring in? And I think this is very healthy, because at the end of the day, whether you're a developer, a UXer, a business owner, whatever your role, it's being human that will prime the way you interact with everyone else. And it would be stupid to miss the tricks of every single other discipline just because it's a new methodology. So I mentioned Nokia and Spotify, and they were present at the conference, and they shared how they do Agile, and they explained it very distinctly, and there were some distinct similarities. So all the Nokia, and Nokia is enormous, but interestingly enough, each team works differently. So the way I worked in Berlin with the Maps teams was completely different to the way their other teams, whether in Espoo in Finland or in the US work. But it was already very Agile. We were building maps on the web, so not on phone, but on the web. So what was then maps.ovi.com, which is now called here.com. And I was also working on a prototype to load the maps onto your phone from the web. Spotify is a startup which is very, very proud of its success. They've recruited over 140 people in the last, I think, 12 months, building from 30 to 170. They're growing at the same pace. And they're very, very much about exploring what works for them. But the stories from those two companies, and also a bit from IBM, was pretty much this, that they had figured out that there is something about the space you give the people and the team itself that seems to be the magic trick. I find the space part really, really interesting, and they both said the same thing, which was it was the hardest to get. Because they didn't have to talk to POs, they didn't have to talk to business owners, they had to go talk to facilities managers. And facilities managers have so many square feet per person, and that's it. And they had to go and argue that they needed more space, because there was really, really something about having more space. And the space that they used, they put all the people together. So up to 12, both those companies acknowledge about up to 12 people is the ideal number. And you put them all together in a space that is dedicated to them. Everyone else is welcome, and to do that, just have 3 walls. The third wall is open. It can be closed in a very symbolic way. So Spotify strings some interesting pieces of plastic across to create a half barrier, or they use glass doors, but it really 3 walls. Anybody who walks by can see what's going on, they can see what's on the walls, they can see the discussion taking place, they can see people working together. But the space has to be large enough because people have to move. So you don't place your desks in a corner and people sit there and that's the end of it. The idea is that if they're able to move around and to arrange their seating to match their requirements, then it works so much better. So if one dev can go and sit next to another guy and they start pair designing, it gets more powerful. That means the desk needs to be big enough that all of a sudden you can bring another computer, you can bring another chair. It's also having a space that's flexible in a way that you can have desks that you all work at one day, or a big meeting room one day, or you can push everything to the side and you all stand up and you start talking. Spotify in particular has really a flexi combo where one side of the room has the very relaxing side, it has the sofas, it has all the walls, and the other side has all the desks and the computers. So they can make the best of their space. They don't have to go get a meeting room. They have a meeting room in their space. They have all the walls they need to put the documentation up. Because what's always very important Agile and what really, really works is about showing the work in progress. It's all about visibility. It's about making what you do visible and understandable to anybody or almost who steps in. The team, interestingly, is very self-sufficient, self-organized. This idea of selfness, of independence, can come across as a bit risky to a business owner who thinks, well, hang on a second, I don't want a bunch of rogues in a pirate ship sailing away and doing whatever they want. However, because the space is open, it only has 3 walls, the CEO can walk by any day and have a look. Anybody can walk by and have a look. But the team has to be given a way to organize themselves by themselves. Self-sufficiency is about having the right skills on board. And this depends very, very much what you're trying to output at the end. But it's about not having QA somewhere else. It's about not having UX somewhere else. If there is a design decision, then the designer should be in the room, not sitting at the other end of the building. Of course, they do have the problem, what happens when somebody is on several pieces of work? Well, there's a desk for that person, they can come in. They can come in and join the team whenever they want, and we know where to find them. And the magic number of 12 seems to be what they found out to be. Bigger than 12, the relationship starts to break, it doesn't quite work out. It's better to break a team and create another one, which is what Spotify is doing at the moment. It's quite interesting. If you can try and follow them, what they're doing is really, really interesting because they're growing so quickly. They're really trying to figure out how do we keep an amazing product, and amazing growth at the same time. And at the moment, they've split every single segment of the Spotify player across different teams. Now, for having seen this at Nokia, there's a huge problem of keeping the features aligned and the experience aligned. But that's a problem they'll tackle in their own time. So from pondering all this, and I started looking at them, and I've seen, working in the room with the dev as a UXer is invaluable. So I'm not going to go into the problem of sprint zero and how do you align the timings, because for me it's very simple. Experiment and find out how it works for you. And there's another thing, which is some problems should never arrive in the dev rooms. If an idea is at the stage level, glint in the CEO's eye, it should not be in the dev room. End of story. It needs to be meaty enough that they can wonder how to build it, but certainly not what to build. They can be involved in the decision process on how to evolve the idea, but I wouldn't put a business's financial future in the hands of just a team of developers on the third floor. I would involve the whole team, or I would take the decision. However, working with the dev team for me has been very, very good. Firstly, because it enabled me to educate them on the value of UX, to help them understand how those wireframes that they were manipulating came about, to help them read them, understand them, and embed them into the process. Because remember, they're working on user stories. Your user story might be a little corner on your wireframe, or it might be a block of 10 or 15 wireframes because it has several states. But being able to work with them, they slowly started to understand the value I brought and the things I could solve. And I was equally able to say, well, this one's not for me, that's a design problem. Or actually, it might be me, it might be somebody else, but let's have a chat and see what it goes. Integrating with the dev team also enabled me to learn a lot about Agile and to embed me in the process. So I made that deliberate decision to go and attend the stand-ups. And at first, believe me, you stand up awkwardly, and you're in a corner, and they're all saying there are very technical things, and you're like, I don't know. And then they're almost about to glance over me, but especially here in Britain, people are very polite, so they couldn't quite do that. So I just stand up and I say, well, yesterday I did this, and today I did that. And I'm also available to help you with this problem because I can see I've got a wireframe for this. And believe me, day after day after day, they start realizing that there's a real value with having you in the room and that you can help solve the problems, especially when you realize that you really, really help break down things so they don't have to wonder which side to take it on. I also use and abuse their walls, and I embed myself in it. So by doing really big wall designs. So, that's the scale of a pen, so you can imagine how big that drawing was. I thought I was going to run out of wall. They can't avoid me. They can't escape me. My stuff is all over the walls. They can stop, and I'm very happy. Every time somebody stops and looks at it, I almost creep by them, and I say, what do you think? Non-judgmental, everybody's allowed an opinion, and it's generally like, well, I'm not sure, or how about this, how about that? And we get started on the conversation. I also hijack completely the board with the list. As you can see, we've got user journeys here. It was for a really complex registration process. They have their bunch of stories, even in design there. And they were, believe me, they were standing up and looking at this when trying to tackle a problem. So it really, really worked. I made it work at AKQA. I made it work at Orange, at Nokia. So there's really good stuff here. And just looking back when I was preparing this talk, I was like, hang on a second, I've got a lot of Agile. And it's worked really, really well. The secret has been time. It doesn't work on day one, and it doesn't work on week one. On month 2 or 3, then I start getting traction. But it really, really takes time. Another way of working in Agile was in a completely different set of projects where we had what's called business as usual stream of work. My agency, one of my old agencies, had managed to have a pretty interesting contract where we were answering the briefs for a business because their internal UX team couldn't cope. And everything we were producing was going straight to their dev team. And the whole point of this stream of work was that segment of the business was quite eager to demonstrate that the bottleneck was the dev team and not them. So we had a challenge to answer to an incredible amount of briefs that were fired at us. We had 5, 6, 7 usually on a Monday. you use great way of working and collaborating with others to bring them onto your process. A couple of very quick thoughts on firefighting, because that's very often what happens in Agile. You get thrown into an Agile dev team, they're full in process, there's been a lot of history, there might have been a few UXers before you, and you end up just running around like a mad cow. The more you know about the technique and the more you understand about the process of Agile, the easier it will be. Because, for example, you can figure out that the stand-up in the morning is a great place to pull the alarm and saying, guys, this is just not working. Can we stop and think? Definitely ask. Agile is all about communication. So if your team is about, we're Agile, great, then I'm going to ask you questions. This is not about taking your time, this is about collaborating. Because I need your answer to do my job. And only all together will we do a better product. And the final secret is to not get bogged down by documentation. So still using that principle of trying to lower the definition. On a pretty big piece of work, I got away with a lot of updating deck after deck after deck of UX simply by saying at some point, guys, I can't keep up. So the reference will be the product, and I will be part of the QA process to check it's okay. And I will only update the documentation for everything that's invisible. So I do not want to update a wireframe because there's a button. Okay, I've QA'd it, it works. But then I document only the rest because there was just no time. Finally, as I was saying before, really think about this. Some problems should not arrive in the dev room. Every business and every project and every team is different. And because Agile relies so much on people, every time a new person comes into the room to work with you, you'll have to define new ways of working with the team and constantly adapt. If you apply your top skills first, like don't forget the basics, you'll be fine. Don't try to go too much into details. And I think Agile is one of the reasons we're very much seeing the rise of the UX unicorns, the multitaskers, just because, partly because of the firefighting, also because some of them seem to have done a good job and created the reputation that having a multitasking person really, really helps the team. That's not my case. I'm just a UXer. I can't design to save my life, and I can't copyright either. So that was it, really. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sophie. It's a stack of information.